I have spoken. The Giriama will not surrender this sacred earth.
Your superstitions mean nothing. Move aside, woman!
Everything you've been told about how Kenya won its freedom is a lie. They told you about the Mau Mau, men in forests, machetes, guns. That's the tidy little version they let you keep. But they buried someone else entirely. A woman the British arrested not once, twice. Exiled 1,000 kilometers from home. And they still could not shut her up. She was in her 70s. No army, no weapons, no political title, no backup. What she had? A single hen, a set of ancient oaths, and a fury that only comes from watching your own people sell themselves out. Her name was Mekatilili Menza, and this is the story they were terrified you'd find. I didn't learn her name in school. In school, they gave us 3 sentences. Then we moved on. I found her sitting in my room, staring at 0 views, 0 subscribers, convinced the whole system was rigged against people like me. But it wasn't the heroism that hit me. It wasn't the speeches. It was the betrayal. The part no one mentions. The people working hardest against her. Sometimes they weren't British. Sometimes they were her own leadership, her own people. This isn't just history. This is what happens when one person with nothing decides the rules no longer apply. She was born Mnyazi wa Menza in a Giriama village, Kenya's coast, a community built on agriculture, ritual, a fierce collective identity. Life had structure, it had meaning. Then the slave traders came. Her brother was taken, just gone. That kind of loss doesn't leave you. It rewires everything. How you see power, how you see protection, who you trust with either. By the time the British Colonial machine settled into the coast, the Giriama already knew the feeling, being treated like a resource, something to extract. The British brought taxes. You couldn't pay unless you sold your labor, forced conscription, and they brought headmen. Local men elevated, just high enough to feel important. Their job? Make the community comply. Some of those headmen did it willingly. That part matters, because the deepest wound in this story isn't the colonizer. It's the ones who made colonization easier for a little personal benefit. Early on building this channel, I had someone I trusted take credit for my work, hand it to someone else. Contacts I'd built, doors I'd knocked on, gone. I know that specific feeling, powerlessness. So did she. If you've ever watched someone you trusted sell you out for personal benefit, drop the word betrayal in the comments right now. I read every single one. August 13, 1913. British colonial officer Arthur Champion calls a baraza, a public assembly, Giriama territory. The agenda? Get them to comply. Labor quotas, tax policies. They'd been resisting for months. Champion expected the usual performance. Reluctant cooperation, heads nodding, eyes down. What he got? Mekatilili Menza, walking in, carrying a hen and her chicks. In Giriama culture, that image carries weight, a mother protecting her young. She didn't need to explain the metaphor. What happened at that baraza? The confrontation, the words exchanged, the moment that reportedly left Champion rattled. It sent a signal through the entire community. She wasn't asking for permission. She was drawing a line. From that meeting, she moved fast. She revived the kifudu, a sacred ceremonial dance, historically led by elder women. She used it not just as ritual, but as mobilization. Women gathered, messages passed. Resistance stopped being a whisper. The British called her a troublemaker, called her unstable. But her own people started calling her something else entirely. What she did next made the British genuinely nervous. And it wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a march. It was something far older than either. Have you ever spoken up in a room where everyone else stayed quiet? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Kaya Fungo, a sacred forest, the spiritual center, ancestral heart of Giriama identity. Mekatilili brought people there, not for speeches, for oaths. Not political pledges, ancient binding oaths. Their kind but carried consequences no British law could touch, could threaten, could ever replace. For women, the Mukushe oath. For men, the Fisi oath. The effect was surgical. Anyone who cooperated with British labour recruitment, anyone who paid those taxes, anyone who collaborated, was now in violation of something far more immediate than a colonial regulation. This is the part they quietly skip over. She didn't just inspire resistance, she built an infrastructure for it. She made betrayal costly from the inside. But they had men on the British payroll. They were watching, reporting back. The British were learning exactly what she was doing, exactly where. Resistance was growing, but so was the list of people who wanted it stopped.
October 17, 1913. Mekatilili wa Menza, arrested, alongside her fellow resistance leader, Wanji wa Modorikola. The British moved fast. No drawn-out trial, no platform for her to speak. Exiled, over 1,000 kilometers. From the coast to Kisii, Western Kenya. Far from her community, far from the sacred forests, far from every soul she'd spent months organizing. The British considered it solved. They were wrong. 4 months later, an elderly woman walked out of that exile on foot, across terrain that should have stalked her, and returned home. What happened after that walk became the most significant act of Giriama defiance in recorded history. The escape, the uprising, the final betrayal. And what every solo creator still fighting alone needs to understand. Part 2 is coming. But I'm only dropping part 2 if this one gets the love it deserves. So if you're locked in and you want to know how one grandmother escaped prison, walked 1,000 kilometers, and made the British panic even harder, smash that like button right now. Drop Mekatilili in the comments if you're never quitting either, no matter how many times this system tries to bury you. And if you're new here, subscribe. We tell the stories they don't teach in school, the ones that actually help us build when we're fighting alone. Part 2 drops if this hits the numbers. See you there, if you show up.